There are people who quietly step out of the frame, who linger at the edges when a camera lifts, offering a soft smile and a gentle refusal. Not because they dislike memories, but because something within them hesitates at the idea of being captured. For them, photos are not simple snapshots. They are mirrors that freeze a version of themselves they are never fully ready to face, a reminder of time moving faster than they can hold it. A permanence they haven't quite made peace with. So they avoid the lens, not out of vanity, but out of vulnerability. Because some hearts feel safer in motion unrecorded, unpaused, unobserved, where they can exist without evidence, and where their story can remain quietly their own. There is a particular kind of silence that appears when a camera is raised, a soft, almost invisible shift in the air. Most people smile on instinct, entering the frame without hesitation. But some feel something entirely different, something like a tightening in the chest. A subtle pulling away, a quiet desire to step back until the moment passes. It happens quickly, gently, without dramatic intention. They drift toward the edges of the room, pretend to check their phone, offer to take the picture instead, or redirect attention towards someone else. And in those small, barely noticeable movements, a deeply human story begins. Because for them, being photographed is not a neutral act. It stirs something internal, something that feels too exposed, too permanent, too unfiltered. It activates a part of the mind that rarely speaks out loud but always whispers beneath the surface. The whisper often sounds like this: I don't know if I'm ready to be seen. Not seen in the superficial sense the world imagines, not the worries of looking good or bad, but seen in a way that feels more existential. To be photographed is to be paused. To be paused is to be observed. And to be observed is to feel, for a moment, undeniably real. Many don't consciously articulate this. They simply feel the hesitation, a small, instinctive recoil that appears like a shadow at the edge of consciousness, as if stepping into the frame requires them to commit to a version of themselves they haven't fully accepted. For some, the discomfort shows up as the sense that the camera captures too much, not the external details, but the internal ones. The fatigue in their eyes, the tension in their shoulders, the emotions they've learned to carry quietly. A photograph freezes what they usually keep in motion, and stillness can feel revealing. For others, the avoidance is gentler. Not fear, not shame, just a soft disconnection. As if they struggle to reconcile the person they feel like inside with the person who appears on the screen. The image looks foreign, slightly off, not quite matching the inner experience, and so they choose distance, not out of dislike, but out of unfamiliarity. Then there are those who step back, not because of the camera itself, but because of what the moment asks of them: a smile they don't feel ready to offer, a presence they don't feel ready to claim, a record of a day they aren't sure they want to remember. Avoiding photos becomes a way of protecting the self from moments that feel too sharp, too unprepared, too final. Yet from the outside, it looks simple. Someone declines a picture. Someone gives a small wave of refusal. Someone says, "I'll sit this one out." But beneath that choice is often a quiet history, layers of internal narratives, unspoken sensitivities, and subtle emotional habits that shape their response. In these early moments of avoidance, nothing dramatic happens. No one protests loudly. No one draws attention. It's the opposite, an act of stepping away, soft and nearly invisible. But invisible does not mean insignificant. People who avoid photos often live with a deep awareness of themselves, the sensitivity to how they appear, how they feel, how they exist in the eyes of others. And when the camera rises, that awareness becomes just a little too sharp, a little too illuminated, so they take a step back. Not out of rejection, but out of self-preservation. Not because they don't want to be remembered, but because they aren't sure how they want to be remembered, at least, not yet. In this quiet step back lies the beginning of the story, one where avoidance is not laziness or insecurity, but an emotional instinct shaped by experiences the world rarely sees. A story of visibility, vulnerability, and the complex relationship some people have with the idea of being captured at all. Before the avoidance became subtle, quiet, and almost automatic, it began somewhere far earlier, long before adulthood, long before the camera became a symbol of exposure. Many of the roots reach back to childhood, a time when mirrors were not just objects but experiences, and when being seen was still tangled with approval, comparison, or correction. A child does not always understand their reflection. They only learn what others teach them about it. For some, the first mirror was not glass, but the reactions of adults. A parent who commented on appearance with sharp precision. A relative who teased with a laugh that lingered too long. A classroom moment where someone pointed out a flaw the child had never noticed until that instant. These small moments do not seem powerful at the time, but the mind of a child absorbs them as truths, and once internalized, those truths shape how they grow into themselves. Some children learned early that being looked at meant being evaluated. Their face, their posture, their expression, none of it was neutral. A camera, even years later, becomes a quiet echo of those early judgments. Not consciously, not dramatically, but in a way that stirs a memory of scrutiny. Others grew up in environments where being photographed felt forced. Smile properly. Do it again. Hold still. For a sensitive child, these instructions can turn a simple moment into performance. The photo becomes less about memory and more about meeting expectations that their body cannot comfortably meet. Over time, they associate the lens with a subtle pressure-on obligation to appear a certain way. And, as adults, they step back rather than step into that old feeling. Then there are children who never quite saw themselves reflected accurately in the world around them. Not in mirrors, not in comments, not in photos. They felt different, quieter, more sensitive, more inward, and photographs became a reminder of that mismatch. The camera captured a version of them that didn't align with who they felt like inside. The disconnect formed early, before they had the words to explain it. Some children were invisible in their own homes, overshadowed, dismissed, or simply overlooked. When no one looks at you with recognition, being photographed later in life can feel unnatural. The lens feels unfamiliar, almost confrontational. Visibility is not something they were taught to inhabit with ease. Others experienced the opposite. Too much attention. Parents who held the camera constantly, not out of love, but out of control, image, or comparison. Children who were told to pose, perform, or represent perfection for relatives or social appearances. For them, the avoidance in adulthood becomes a rebellion against that early pressure. An act of reclaiming their right to exist without display. And then there are those whose childhood memories are tangled with instability, conflict, or emotional unpredictability. In such environments, a photograph wasn't a moment of joy. It was an interruption, a snapshot inside a life where safety was inconsistent. The camera didn't preserve happy memories, it froze moments inside homes they wanted to move beyond. As adults, they sense that photographs hold too much. They prefer to let some chapters blur rather than solidify them into permanence. Even something as simple as a child not liking the way they look in early photos can plant seeds. The brain compares, stores impressions, builds patterns. A few repeated moments of discomfort create a long-term association. Being photographed feels wrong. And without realizing it, that feeling follows them into adulthood like an inherited shadow. Childhood does not end when we grow up. It echoes, sometimes softly, sometimes unmistakably. The way a child learned to be seen becomes the way an adult responds to visibility. The camera becomes a symbolic mirror, not of appearance, but of every early moment that shaped their relationship with themselves. And so, when they step back from photos now, they are not stepping away from the lens. They are stepping away from memories their body still remembers, even when their mind no longer names them. A photograph does something the human mind finds strangely difficult to process. It shows us as others see us, not as we experience ourselves. The brain spends a lifetime constructing an internal sense of identity, a blend of memories, sensations, and familiar angles glimpsed through mirrors. But a camera interrupts that constructed image. It presents something more objective, more literal, more detached. And for many, that difference is unsettling. Scientists call this the familiarity discrepancy. The version of ourselves we know best is the one reflected in the mirror, reversed and softened through repetition. We are used to that face because it has accompanied us through every emotion, every morning, every quiet moment of thought. but the camera shows the unfamiliar orientation the way everyone else sees us. The brain hesitates, confused by the mismatch, perceiving it as wrong, even when it is accurate. This is why so many people dislike photos of themselves. The unfamiliar triggers discomfort because the brain is wired to prefer the known. Another factor lies in self-discrepancy theory, the idea that each person carries multiple internal selves, the actual self, the ideal self, and the perceived self. A photograph reveals the actual self with blunt honesty, while the ideal self floats just out of reach. When these two selves collide in a single still image, the mind senses the gap. The larger the gap, the stronger the emotional reaction. For those who avoid photos, this gap might feel too sharp, too revealing. A picture becomes a moment where internal narratives and external reality meet without permission. There is also the psychological phenomenon of negativity bias, the brain's tendency to focus more on flaws than strengths. When looking at a photo, most people don't notice the warmth in their expression or the gentleness in their posture. Instead, they fixate on asymmetries, tension, imperfections. The camera captures everything, and the mind zooms in on what it has been trained to criticize. This reaction is even stronger in people who grew up receiving appearance-based comments, or who internalized a critical inner voice. The picture becomes evidence, not memory, and evidence feels threatening. Another layer involves emotional memory. The brain encodes feelings much more deeply than visual details. So when someone sees a photo, they do not only see an image, they feel a memory. If they were anxious that day, tired, self-conscious, or disconnected from themselves, the photo revives the emotional imprint. The picture becomes a container for something they didn't want to revisit. For people who avoid being photographed, their bodies often perceive the camera as a trigger rather than a tool. Not a device capturing light, but a device capturing vulnerability. This internal response can be subtle. A tightening around the shoulders, a shift in the eyes, a small dip in the breath. The nervous system remembers. Beyond emotion, there is identity. Humans tend to understand themselves through movement, voice, energy qualities that unfold through time. A still image removes all of that. It reduces complexity to a single frame. And for those who feel more like a dynamic self than a static one, the photo feels incomplete, almost inaccurate. They do not see themselves in the frozen moment because they live as motion, not stillness. There is also a cognitive effect called spotlighting, where people imagine others pay far more attention to their appearance than they actually do. When photographed, this imagined scrutiny amplifies. The person feels watched, even if no one is judging. This creates a sense of exposure that goes beyond the image itself. All of these mechanisms, familiarity discrepancy, self-discrepancy, negativity bias, emotional memory, identity conflict, spotlighting combined into a psychological landscape where a camera becomes more than a lens. It becomes a mirror held up at an angle the mind isn't ready to face. And when someone steps away from photos, it is often not a simple dislike. It is the brain protecting a fragile equilibrium between who they believe themselves to be and what the world reflects back to them. There is a quiet conflict that unfolds inside people who avoid being photographed. Tension between wanting to exist in memories and wanting to escape the weight of being witnessed. It is not dramatic, not loud, not easily explained. It is subtle, almost invisible, yet powerful enough to influence every moment a camera appears. The internal struggle often begins with vulnerability. A photograph freezes a person in an unguarded moment. And for those who carry emotional sensitivity or self-protection as second nature, that stillness feels risky. They fear being misinterpreted, misunderstood, or captured in a way that does not match the truth of who they feel they are inside. Being seen can feel like being exposed. And exposure, for some, is synonymous with danger. Many people who avoid photos are practiced at blending in, keeping their emotions contained, managing their presence carefully. They know how to appear composed, even when they are unraveling internally. But a camera interrupts that control. It asks for authenticity they have learned to regulate. The lens becomes a kind of spotlight, one that illuminates not just the face, but the hidden parts of the self they've spent years trying to protect. For some, There is a quiet perfectionism at play. Not vanity, not ego, just an internal belief that they must present themselves correctly or not at all. A photograph becomes a test they never feel prepared to take. The pressure to look natural while feeling observed creates a tension they cannot soothe. So instead of facing it, they step away. Perfectionists often avoid moments that reveal their humanity, because humanity comes with flaws, asymmetries, softness. A photo records those things permanently, and permanence makes the imperfections feel heavier than they truly are. Others experience a different kind of resistance. The discomfort of being the focus of attention, even for a single moment, even for a single click. They don't want to be the center of anything. They want to stay on the edges, where they feel safe, unnoticed, uninterrupted. When the camera points at them, they feel something tighten, as if the world suddenly expects too much. The act of being seen feels demanding. Some people carry a long history of emotional invisibilities spent feeling overlooked, unheard, or dismissed. Ironically, visibility becomes equally uncomfortable. Being photographed makes them aware of themselves in a way they were never taught to tolerate. It feels foreign to occupy space, to be acknowledged, to be documented. So they avoid the moments that force them into that unfamiliar spotlight. Others hide because they are afraid of being remembered inaccurately. A photograph can become a permanent record of a moment they have outgrown, a body they don't recognize, an expression they didn't mean. For people who evolve constantly, who feel different from one year to the next, a photo can feel like an outdated version of themselves, being trapped in time. There is also the fear of emotional leakage, the worry that the camera will reveal something unintended, sadness behind a tired smile, loneliness in the eyes, tension in the jaw. Photos don't lie, and for some, they feel too honest. They reveal what the person has worked hard to keep internal. And then there is the quietly universal fear. The fear of being remembered in a way that doesn't feel true. The fear that others will see the image and decide that is who they are, when inside, they feel far more layered, more complex, more fluid than any single frame can hold. This creates the resistance, a tug-of-war between visibility and protection. The desire to be part of the moment and the desire to hide from it. The longing to be remembered and the fear of being captured. In that conflict, avoidance becomes the compromise. The safest option, the quietest choice. Not an act of rejection, but an act of self-preservation. A way to stay unseen in a world that constantly asks for visibility.